don't know why he does this, like every time I film. He never does this. And then as soon as I go to film, he comes over and climbs on top of me. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my gingerbread, like monogram kind of mug. This is from my mom from Christmas. Very fun. So today's video is going to be my January TBR. Today is actually New Year's Eve, so it's feeling a little bit wild today, you know? And I'm wearing my Midnight's cardigan. So this month we're kind of focusing a lot on romantasy, mostly because there's a lot of backlist of things that I've been meaning to read and things that keep coming up that I want to read, and it's just getting a lot. And I keep saying I'm going to read things and then I don't. So I just decided, you know what, this month we're just gonna read all of those. Not all of them because it's impossible, but I'm putting a bunch of them on this list. Realistically, I don't think I'm gonna be able to get to them all, but we'll see how many I do get to. So let's just get into it and I'll tell you about the books that I'm trying to read in January. The first one is obviously Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros, but I'm not gonna be able to get that until January 21st, so that's gonna be a lot later in the month, but we are all excited about this. We all wanna know what happens. I guess we're not all excited. People that like the series are excited. I'm desperate to know how she resolves the situation that was in book 2, if it's going to resolve in book 3 or not. I hope it does. But I'm also just curious about other things, like the signet and just... try not to spoil anything if you haven't read Fourth Wing. But there's so many questions that I have, and we don't even know if we're going to get answers in this book. And there's so many theories about different things, so I hope we get some answers. I also hope there's not going to be anything else that's just going to absolutely shatter us in this book, but she probably will. Very much looking forward to that. I have the audiobook pre-ordered, so it will hit me immediately and I'll be able to start it right away, which is very exciting. I might go to a midnight release party, I'm not sure. Another one that I've been really wanting to read because I've heard really good things about it from a lot of people is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This is my Waterstones signed edition. I really like it, and I like that the Quicksilver part is silver and then his little tear is silver. I really don't know much about this, but I've heard really great things. On the back it says, "Do not touch the sword, do not turn the key, do not open the gate." Sarah's Fane is good at keeping secrets. No one knows about the powers she possesses, or the fact that she's been stealing from the Undying Queen's reservoirs for as long as she can remember. But a secret is like a knot. Sooner or later it is bound to come undone. When Sarah comes face to face with death himself, she inadvertently opens a gateway between realms and is transported to Evelia, a land of ice and snow. The Fae have always been the stuff of myth, of legend, of nightmares, but it turns out they're real. And Ceres has landed in the century of a centuries-long conflict that might just get her killed. The first of her kind to enter Evelia in over 1,000 years, Ceres mistakenly binds herself to Kingfisher, a handsome Fae warrior with an agenda of his own. He will use her powers to protect his people, no matter what it costs him or her. Death has a name. It is Kingfisher of the Aegean Gate. His past is murky, his attitude stinks, and he's the only way Ceres is going to make it home. So, I mean, that's pretty vague, but like I said, I've heard really good things about it. I've heard Kingfisher's kind of like the new book boyfriend or whatever. But I'm just very curious. I really like the cover. It's very intriguing, and I would like to know the story behind it. The next one is one that I started a while ago and put down, not because I didn't like it, but just because I got lost in TBRs and different months and all that stuff. But I've also heard really good things about this, and that is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. I started this, like I said, and got to like 3 hours in, 4 hours in, which is not really the beginning of the plot. Like, I feel like there's a couple things that happen, but I feel like the real plot and world building and stuff doesn't really kick off until after that. So I think I'm starting to get to that point, maybe. I just started it again today. And I'm really interested in it. It has dragons, which is kind of the main reason I'm interested in it. But people, I feel like, really love this or just think it's fine and not worth the hype. On the back it says, "He's fire and brimstone, I'm shattered ice. I'll gladly burn beneath him until the world comes crumbling down." From what I understand of this, she's kind of like a vigilante. She's hired by this organization to kill bad people. To her eyes, bad people, but I think it's the government people who are corrupt. But I think she has some sort of secret potentially tied to a dragon. I'm not really sure, honestly. And something tragic happens to her friend, and she is imprisoned, and I think they pull her out because they think she can be useful. That's really all I know kind of about this, and that's what I'm going into reading this again, picking it back up. But there are dragons on the stenciled edges, so I'm hoping there's a lot more to do with dragons than it first appears. But excited to continue this and see how it goes. And then the next one I want to read is not romantasy, but it is a series that I have been slowly getting through, so we'll see if I can pick up the next one, and that is Reaper at the Gates by Saba Tahir. This is book 3 in the Ember and Ashes quartet. I really like this series, I just haven't finished it yet, so I'm trying to get to it. I can't really tell you about the third one, but essentially the first one, you're following a girl who is the daughter of a rebellion, and she's sold into slavery to one of the higher ranking officials in order to spy and kind of like play double agent kind of. And you're also following a soldier who's like trying to climb the ranks and get really esteemed, and his mother is like a commander or something, so she is the person this girl gets sold to. So it's all kind of tangled up. It's very reminiscent of like the Roman Empire and how evil and cutthroat and powerful and power hungry they were. But there's also magic and other elements going into it as well. So I'm curious to see what happens next, especially with one of the side characters, Helene, the age-old tale of like trying to bring down a corrupt government, you know. The next one I would love to read is What the River Hides by Isabel Ibanez. This is the second book in the duology, What the River Knows. And this is kind of like a historical fantasy, but fantasy is very vague. It's like very much not fantastical. There's like a tiny bit of magic. Maybe it's more like magical realism, but it's more historical fiction, and it's kind of archaeological. And in the first book, you're on this like archaeological dig and stuff like that, and there's a little bit of magic hidden and secrets. And they're essentially trying to find Cleopatra's tomb and the treasures within, and also potentially some magical things. And it's really good. It's kind of Mummy-esque with the two main characters. While like it kind of started off a little bit slow, but was really interesting, the ending was so intense and so crazy, and there's so many things happening that I was desperate to pick up book 2 and obviously had to wait. And then when it did finally come, I was reading other things. But I am interested in continuing the story and finding out what happens and just seeing the conclusion. The next one is The Ever King by L.J. Andrews. This is the Arcane edition. It's really cool. But again, a series that I've heard people rave about, including some of my personal friends. They just love this series and want me to read it, and I've been meaning to and just haven't. And from what I know about this, it's fae and pirates, and that just sounds cool. I think from what I remember, she is either kidnapped by the Ever King because he's like a pirate, and he's going to use her as collateral, like a hostage situation to get what he wants. I think that's the vibe, and then maybe there's secrets that we don't know about. I'm kind of going into it pretty blind, but it did sound really good, and I am very curious about it. I think the idea of fae and pirates being together is really interesting, and hopefully I can also give it a shot in January. The next one I want to read is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This is one that I've also been wanting to read for a very long time and just haven't picked up yet. My friend Kate actually just picked it up recently and has read them, so I am also anxious to get to it. So she's the very thing he spent his whole life hunting. He is the very thing she spent her whole life pretending to be. Only the extraordinary belong in the kingdom of Isla. The exceptional, the empowered, the elites. The powers these elites have possessed for decades were graciously given to them by the plague, though not all were fortunate enough to both survive the sickness and reap the reward. Those born ordinary are just that, ordinary, and when the king decreed that all ordinaries be banished in order to preserve his elite society lacking in ability suddenly became a crime, making Paedalin Grey a felon by fate and a thief by necessity. Surviving in the slums as an ordinary is no simple task, and Paedon knows this better than most. Having been trained by her father to be overly observant since she was a child, Paedon poses as a psychic in the crowded city, blending in with the elites as best she can in order to stay alive and out of trouble. Easier said than done. When Paedon unexpectedly saves one of Isla's princes, she finds herself thrown into the purging trials. The brutal competition exists to show Kate the elite's powers, the very thing Paedon lacks. If the trials and the opponents within them don't kill her, the prince she's fighting feelings for certainly will if he discovers that she is completely ordinary. I love the idea of, I love competitions and like arena fights and stuff like that. Like I love those elements in books, so I'm very excited to read this. I've also heard people really love this one. I feel like, again, you either love it or hate it, but they like the main character or they like the love interest, so I'm curious to see what this is all about. And then one of the kind of book talk darlings that I've been meaning to read for a long time again and just haven't gotten to yet is The Serpent of Wings and Night by Carissa Broadbent. And I know there's vampires in this. I think there's also trials in this. Let's see. Human or vampire, the rules of survival are the same. Never trust, never yield, and always, always guard your heart. The adopted human daughter of the nightborn vampire king Araya carved her place in a world designed to kill her. Her only chance to become something more than prey is entering the Kejari, a legendary tournament held by the goddess of death herself. Love tournaments. But winning won't be easy against the most vicious warriors from all 3 vampire houses. To survive, Araya is forced to make an alliance with a mysterious rival. Everything about Rain is dangerous. He's a ruthless vampire, an efficient killer, an enemy to her father's crown, and her greatest competition. Yet what terrifies Araya most of all is that she finds herself oddly drawn to him. Can't imagine why, you know? But there's no room for compassion in the Kejari. War for the throne of House of Night brews, shattering everything that Araya thought she knew about her home. And Rain may understand her more than anyone, but their blossoming attraction could be her downfall in a kingdom where nothing is more deadly than love. I kind of hate those tiny catchphrases at the end where it's like, but love is more dangerous. Sorry. I am very excited to read this. I've heard amazing things about this one. I feel like people rave about it. This is like, has a cult following. This has a fandom, you know. People love it, and I got this secondhand a long time ago, so I would love to read it as well. And then last, there are like 9 books on this TBR. There's no way I'm going to read them all. There's absolutely no way. And we're not going to do the jar shelf thing because there's plenty of sprayed edges here. But the last one is Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. I remember long ago, whenever I decided I wanted to read this, that I remember being like, ooh, that sounds really interesting. That sounds good. That sounds like something I want to read. And then I kind of like didn't pick it up, didn't get it, didn't think about it for a little while. It was like on my radar kind of, but I forgot what it was about. And I finally remember, because I was reading this, I was reading the description, what drew me to this book. So it says Caraval meets Throne of the Fallen in this spicy dark romantasy where a necromancer needs help from a dangerous phantom to win a deadly competition, only to find their partnership puts her at risk of breaking the game's most vital rule, don't fall in love. But the Caraval meets Throne of the Fallen. I was like, what? I love Caraval. It sounds great. So maybe it's not great, but it sounds great, and I'm very excited to try it. When Ophelia and her sister discovers their mother brutally murdered, there is no time to grieve. Ophelia has inherited both her powerful death-driven magic and enormous debt on their home. Circumstances go from dire to deadly. However, when Ophelia's sister decides to pay off the loan by entering Phantasma, a competition where most contestants don't make it out alive and the winner gets granted a single wish, the only way to save her sister is to compete. But Phantasma is a cursed manor with twisting corridors and lavish ballrooms and filled with enticing demons and fatal temptations. Ophelia will need to face 9 floors of challenges to win if her fears don't overtake her first. When a charming, arrogant stranger claims he can protect and guide Ophelia, she knows she shouldn't trust him. While Blackwell may not seem dangerous, appearances can be deceptive. But with her sister's life on the line, Ophelia can't afford to turn him away. She just needs to ignore the overwhelming dark attraction drawing them closer and closer together. Because in Phantasma, the only thing deadlier than losing the game is losing your heart. I love the idea of it being an even more sinister Caraval. I'm so excited. Can't wait. So those are all the books that I'm planning on reading in January. I would love to know what you guys are planning on reading in January. What's the first book you're planning on reading in the new year? Leave it in a comment down below. But as for now, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.